Hello everybody, how are you all? Did you like that one? That one's especially the stingray. Okay, so good afternoon everybody, and this is Debs from Food for Thought. Today I've got someone special on, someone who's going to talk about their personal exploration of using a number of different types of therapies and energy work that they use to kind of move themselves forward, and I thought would be interesting for you to hear about. They use it almost as like mapping a blueprint. So welcome Sue Millet.
Hello.
Hello, how are you?
I'm doing good, thanks.
So Sue, basically, now let's start with one of the key tools that you actually use and use to explore with, and that's human design.
Yeah.
And my understanding is it's a mixture of genetic science and ancient wisdom, but can you explain what human design is for myself and my audience?
Certainly, yes. Human design was, you could say, was downloaded, was given to a chap who changed his name to Ra Uru Hu in 1987. Although the systems, etc., that it's based on, it said have been around for much longer. It's a synthesis of astrology, the Chinese I Ching, the Kabbalah, and the chakra system, and quantum physics. So you can say it's the things and I feel that synthesis of it. I mean, I've actually studied astrology and done some work with the I Ching and the chakra system over the years, and I just feel that the sort of synthesis, the coming together of all those things, just brings something much more sort of tangible, much more useful together out of all those different modalities and stuff.
So more tangible. Well, which parts are you talking about in particular?
It's difficult to say because they're not actually. What actually happens? To calculate somebody's human design chart, what you do is it's based on the person's date, time, and place of birth, which is the same as if you were calculating an astrology chart. So it's still working with the planetary positions, etc., at the date, time, and place that somebody was actually born. But that information is then converted into one of the 64 hexagrams of the I Ching. And then that information is then plotted onto what they call a body graph, which is like a sort of triangular map, if you like, of a bit like if you've seen, I don't know if you want to, I said I've actually got one on my website on the human design page.
I'll put that in.
It's just an example so people can get an idea of what I'm actually talking to. But talking about this body graph, this sort of map, if you like, of 9 centres as opposed to 7 centres that you've got in the chakra system. And then, so it's the way the information sort of comes together and is synthesised, and then the meaning that's drawn from the original thing. So like astrology, so you've got the different themes, etc., from the planets. You've got the themes from the different hexagrams of the I Ching. You've got a certain amount of themes from the chakras. There's a correlation with the chakras, but it's not a direct. It's not like saying that the root center, for example, in as taken in the chakras, is the same as it would be in the human design chart, but it's actually there's a correlation between them.
Okay, interesting. So it's actually like an alchemist's dream in many respects.
If you say so.
The ability to kind of, well, if you've been studying all those areas though and pulling them, having them all in almost one place, is it almost like having runes or not like a tarot, but like a crystal ball type of thing?
Well, it's not a predictive type thing. It's very much about I think as you said before, a sort of blueprint of the person's, you could say personality. I look at it much more as being, because energy is my thing, so I look at it much more being a blueprint for a person's energy. You do, there are, I said the chart's actually based on somebody's date, time, place of birth. So that is their enhanced sort of, personality or whatever you could say. But, we're still influenced by transits, by planetary transits and stuff, by, where the planets are moving, in the heavens and such. So we can still have temporary changes affected from that. And also the other part I haven't actually mentioned about is the effect of, I said about the different, within this body graph diagram, there are different energy centers. Those energy centers, depending on when somebody was born and the placings of the planets and stuff, some of those centers will be activated in the chart and some of them won't be. If a center is actually activated in the chart, then that means that that particular energy center is like broadcasting, sending out energy into the environment and whatever. If the center is not activated, then it's more like a sort of satellite, just is picking up energy from, could be from sort of, I say, planetary transits and stuff, but also picking up energy from people around that have got that center activated. So there's a lot of, it's one of the things that I find really sort of fascinating about human design is that it actually helps you to identify more about what is you and what is not you, because there's so much sort of energetic conditioning going on with these centers that we don't have activated in our own chart, that are sort of picking up energy from other people, and that energy is picked up and it's actually amplified, it's sort of intensified. So if you don't have a particular center activated but you're around somebody that does, you're likely to feel that energy more intensely possibly than they do, and you're more likely to think that that energy is you as opposed to what is truly you.
So can it show how you're conditioned?
It will show where you're most likely to be conditioned. Yeah.
And what might that be? Just out of curiosity.
What, the conditioning?
Yeah. So what can those influences be in regards to that conditioning?
Well, a typical sort of global one, if you like, is the fact that our society, if you like, or certainly the Western world, it's very much geared around, if you want something, you just go ahead and do it. The only way you're going to get something is to take action and make it happen. The Nike just do it type thing. Whereas in human design, there are different energy types. There are 5 different energy types that people's charts would fall into. And only about 8%, 9% of the population is actually, by their designed to be able to literally do that, go out and just make something happen. For the other, 90, 91, 92% or so, there are different variations of waiting for certain, in some cases it's waiting for something in our external environment to respond to. For some people it's waiting to actually be sort of invited into something. Otherwise, if people are just trying to follow that and go ahead and make something happen, then they're sort of pushing really with it, to a certain extent, some cases, energy that they don't have, more likely to burn themselves out, but certainly more likely to get sort of unsatisfactory results with what they're actually doing.
Interesting. So what it does is it gives you an understanding really of what isn't fitting with you and why it wouldn't fit, and what would drain your energies, what would be difficult for you to do.
Yeah, I mean, with human design, it's they tend to say that it's not that, certain people can do things and certain people can't do things. Everybody can do, it's like, it's not a case of saying, you can't be I don't know, like Olympic athlete. So we say that's the pick of the moment sort of thing. If you're a low energy type, but it's the way you actually approach it. So it will give indications of the best way for somebody to actually go about doing what they want to do.
Okay. So you said about the astrology side of it, and does it show how highly conditioned we are by planetary transits?
Well, there's one. There'll be planetary transits of the outer planets. Will obviously have great effects. I mean, say for example, there's the let me think. Neptune, I think, is in gate 55 in the human design chart at the moment. Gate 55 is the gate of spirit or gate of abundance. And if you relate that to a lot of the things that are going on in our sort of consciousness awareness or whatever at the moment, there's a big sort of move towards that sort of nebulous, that shifting sort of awareness of abundance and that. And I think there's a lot for people that's actually shifting in that particular area. The planetary transits do have, more of a global sort of effect, but with the faster moving planets, then they're not likely, they're going to be very sort of short-lived.
Interesting, because of course, as a naturopath, I was trained to really look at the planets and their alignments so that we can understand the influence that it's having on the body, because certain alignments have certain influences on the body. And you only get, that sort of training is only from certain types of naturopathy courses, I'll stress. Yes. It's not your degree courses. But that is absolutely fascinating, because for me, I learned that, if you break bones at certain times, or you can have you can have certain inflammatory issues happening at certain times. And when people come and see me, sometimes they're actually falling into those periods, so coughs and colds and all this business. It's really, really fascinating with the planets. We often don't attach that much importance to it, and yet, mainly because they appear in the newspapers with Mystic Meg, basically, who've heard two lines of, oh, you're going to be rich today, or your husband's going to leave you. So one of those sorts of things if you're a Virgo. So it's interesting. The guys in the chat box are, what are you talking about, ET? Everyone's all talking about basically your numerology in the chat box. Does numerology appear in human design?
It's not. Just trying to think. It's not one of the traditions that human design is actually sort of based on. So it's not. There are people that are working with various different aspects of human design. So there may be people that are working with human design with it, but it's not sort of like mainstream. It's not part of the system.
Oh, okay. So they're integrating different elements, which always tends to happen, because when you look at EFT, emotional freedom technique, with Gary Craig, he was getting rather upset about the fact that people were going off and developing it in more directions than he had. And he'd lost control of it to a certain extent.
Yeah. But then that's the sort of nature of it. And I think EFT is more of a sort of technique that can then be modified and stuff. Human design is more of an understanding, I suppose. So but that understanding can be, brought into different areas, and I'm exploring ways of using it with different, energy type techniques and stuff. So there's a correlation, but not exactly sort of
Oh, have I lost you? You still
No.
there, Sue? Okay.
Yeah.
Sorry, I lost you then for a second. ET in the chat box is saying, I would suggest that the world change is very imminent, but not today. That's good, ET. I'm glad about that.
Yeah.
I'd hate for it to be happening during my show and everybody starts to be distracted. So do you were talking about, the different energy techniques that you use with it. How else do you inform those techniques? Then just tell me a little bit about that.
So how do you
use it with the other energy techniques? Then how do you integrate it?
Well, what I tend to do is I will use human design as a sort of starting place with a person, because as far as I'm concerned, I tend to use the analogy of a bit like a car. If you have a nice car, you spent some money on your car, you polish it at weekends, you give it a clean, you service it regularly and stuff or whatever. But if you don't drive it properly, you're not going to get the best performance out of that particular vehicle. So I use human design as a means really of getting a user manual for that particular person, that particular person's vehicle. So they are aware of the most efficient and effective way of using their particular energetic system.
I love the metaphor about it's kind of like a user manual for the vehicle. That's a brilliant way of putting it, because I was thinking of it like a map, like a blueprint.
Uh-huh.
So now, does the information that you gain, is it unique to yourself on how we live our life and lived our life?
There are certain things that are, like I said, there's 5 energy types. So, if you spread that across I said about sort of 8 or 9% are manifestors. About 70% of the population are generators or manifesting generators. So within that category, there's obviously, a lot of similarities. Each particular type has its own, what they call strategy, which is, what I was alluding to earlier on about, waiting to respond, for example, is a strategy for a generator. But then in the same way, if you look at an astrology chart, most people will look at their signs in the paper or something. That is just basically you can use looking at their sun sign. But there is a whole range of other planets, 10 planets in total or more if you take Chiron and so on into account, that will give you a much wider perspective. And the same thing happens with the human design chart, because you've got all the different planets, including Chiron, and their sort of influence, their position and their influence on the chart. So once you start getting at the top level, if you like, the very basic level of type, then, yes, there's a lot of similarities between people, or between people's types. But as you get down into more of the detail of it, then there is a uniqueness for each individual. And, unless you've got somebody sort of born exactly the same time and place, and exactly the same time and so on.
Like a twin.
Yeah, there's even supposed to be differences between twins. I haven't got down into it myself, to that sort of absolute finite detail. And again, you'd have to be really, really precise with the actual timings and stuff for it. And unfortunately, over here in the UK, we're unlucky in the sense that we don't have times on our birth certificates. Scotland do, I think the States do, and stuff. So people who in the United States having their charts done or whatever, it's much easier for them to actually be more precise with it, because they know their actual time of birth. Whereas ours sometimes can be a little bit sort of hit or miss. Mum going back to remembering, what time was I born?
But you gave me a really good technique, didn't you? Which was basically muscle test on it.
Mm.
And I was talking to them in the audience last week in the chat box about the fact that they, you can muscle test that. So if you're not sure and you want to have your chart done, and you can have it done on, you can have a basic one done, can't you, on the Human Design generic website. So, and you can just put it in there and it will just churn a chart out for you, won't it? Which is quite good. But if you're not sure about your time of birth, just muscle test on it or dowse on it.
Yeah.
I've never thought about doing that, actually. Take somebody else to tell you to use your own technique sometimes.
I know.
She's quite sad, really. So what else? Let me just have a look. So Blue Skies is saying that's a great book, The User Manual for the Brain. Now that's a really interesting point. Is it, in effect, kind of you said it's, user manual for the vehicle, but is it one for the brain?
Not really for the brain. In human design, the top two centres, if anyone's looking at that example of the chart, is the crown centre and what they call the ajna, or the mind. The mind centre is brilliant for analysing data, working out information, and so on. But it's not there. It's not there for us to actually be able to make decisions. It's not connected really to enough to actually really inform us in terms of what is right for us. So within human design, each chart has its own what's called own authority, its own sort of decision making process, if you like. So it's not really a user manual for the brain. It's a user manual for the energy system and for the personality, the best, most efficient way to operate as that particular entity, if you like.
Interesting. So can it show how other people influence you? Or you would be influenced by other people?
You can have an example. If you are anybody on the call today, if they are of their particular chart is such where their mind, their Arjuna centre is undefined, they call it, so not actually activated. They may experience situations where they'll be in somebody's, or go to a workshop or something, a conference or something, and somebody up on the stage is talking about all these new ideas and stuff, and they're going, this is really good, and then they go away from that particular concept, and they're thinking, I don't know about that so much now. It's I seem to believe. Why did I believe it then and I don't believe it now, or it doesn't seem so good? And that's an example of that sort of conditioning. If you've got somebody speaking who's actually got that centre activated, then while you're in that particular, that particular aura, that particular person's energy or whatever, and if you go anywhere where there's a lot of people, there's likely to be people around you that have got centres activated that you actually haven't got activated in your own chart. So it's likely to give you that energy on a temporary basis.
So in effect, it could almost act like a lock and key if you were with somebody, and this is where you get almost like Lennon and McCartney, maybe, where separately they were nowhere near as good as they were collectively. Well, obviously that's my opinion, guys. I like Lennon. McCartney, what on earth happened there? But but together, almost like a lock and key, they fit. And has anybody done their charts at all?
I've done their charts. So, yeah, I think so. Yeah, I've got in the software that I've got for human design, I think there's a chart for, not a composite chart, but a chart for each of them. I think.
Oh, interesting. Does it show that they are kind of switched on in those different areas then when they're collectively working together?
You bear with me a sec, I can tell you.
Because it's just really interesting that actually, we all know that, you can be in a room with someone and someone walks through the door and you're either attracted or you're kind of repelled by them.
Yeah. Well, there's actually something in human design. If you're looking at the actual chart, what makes a centre activated is there's within the chart. There's sort of like I tend to refer to it as sort of like pipework that connects up the different centres.
Yeah.
And the idea is that energy is trying to flow through those connections to get to the throat center, where, you know, in the body graph thing, where the throat is positioned there. Mm-hmm. Because the throat center is really the sort of center of expression and vision and manifestation, etc. in the human design chart. What was I trying to say?
We're talking about this whole influencing, basically, where we're repelled and attracted to people.
Yes.
And how.
So to make a center actually activated, you've got two ends of the pipework coming together to actually make a flow of energy between two centers. You might not be able to make it out on the actual diagram, on the picture on the site there, but if you like, you've got from one center, you've got what they call gate coming out from there, and you've got on the other center a gate coming out. And if in an individual's chart, if those two gates actually join up, then that gives activation in both those centers, either end of those gates. Yeah, does that make sense?
Yeah.
But if you've got a person, you know, person A, who's got one gate in their chart but hasn't got a center activated, and person B, who's got the opposite gate in their chart, there'll be what they call an electromagnetic attraction. You'd be attracted to that particular person because they actually sort of join up that energy, and it's part of that energy to the throat.
Yeah, so effectively they're making that connection for you where you can't make it.
Yeah, and that is why for a lot of types, apart from sort of, manifestors who can just go ahead and do things, it's why a lot of people actually energetically, not necessarily emotionally, you know, you might be a rock and an island, according to Paul Simon.
Yeah.
But majority of people actually need other people or need other people's energy to be able to get that energy in their chart to the throat to actually be able to, express or create, manifest in their lives.
So in effect, if somebody is draining your energy, is that they've got such a need for that, and if you haven't got it, or if you've got it and they haven't got it, and they have such a need for it, that they can totally drain you of it. Like an energy vampire, for instance, that people refer to.
Yeah, it's something that I... excuse me, I'm choking. It's something that I have considered, but not really come up with a satisfactory answer for myself on it yet. I don't, as far as human design is concerned, I don't really feel that, you know, that the whole idea of picking up energy from somebody else, you know, in the different centers, is not a sort of parasitic type thing or anything. You know, it's not sort of like sapping somebody's energy. It's literally just what it's a natural thing what the centers actually do. Mm-hmm. That's what they're designed to do. So I haven't really come up with a satisfactory sort of explanation where that actually sort of comes into the context. I mean, there's obviously certain things that people, you know, certain behaviours and things that people will do which may be more draining. So, for example, I mean, going back to I was saying about the activated mind and the unactivated mind, if you like, or the open mind. If you've got somebody who's got the mind, the Arjuna center, activated in their chart, they are going to a certain extent, have sort of more fixed ideas, and they're going to be certain. The whole point of the activated Arjuna is that the person will be certain, but it doesn't necessarily mean to say that they're right. So they can be certain, but they can be certain about something that's not necessarily correct. But somebody else can with the mind center unactivated, can view something from a whole variety of different perspectives. So there can, you can see from that there could quite easily be a conflict, and if each person is making out the person's behaviour or whatever to be the person as opposed to just behaviour, then that's where you can get into blaming, well, you're so such and such and whatever, you're so pig-headed about your ideas and, you're always changing your mind about things or whatever. But it's just the way people are designed.
Interesting. Right, Liam, hopefully you can hear my microphone. Maybe I'm not talking into it enough today. So I will endeavour to get a bit closer to it for you all. And also, Liam, let's just quickly do a run through again from what we've talked about so far. So, because human design, even for me, Liam, isn't that easy to understand, I'll be honest, and to get my head round. But in effect, what you create, in summary, is from your date, time and location in regards to where you were born, you create a chart, which is in some respects reminds me of like a natal chart, like an astrology chart, which basically gives you almost like a manual, like a user manual for your body and for the decision making that's going on in your life. Yeah?
Yeah.
So there you go, Liam. That's a summary of it for you. And it's a massive area because it does cover so many different things. So in effect, the quantum physics, the biochemistry, the genetics, the astrology, the chakra system, Kabbalah, and the I Ching. And, that's just a massive amount of stuff that it actually collectively synergizes together. Really. So don't, Liam, the thing to do is to go off and read about this afterwards because it is absolutely fascinating, the information it can actually give you and the depth of information it can give you and the insight in regards to why you're doing things in your life and why people influence you in the way they do. And, that's where we kind of were with Sue, which was basically about the fact that other people can come in and act like almost a lock and key with you. So you unlock areas of them and they unlock areas of you. But also my question was, if you are not strong in an area, but actually you have that and somebody else comes along, is it like the energy vampire that we often have, where we can spend half an hour in the presence of somebody else, and you walk away and you're just absolutely shattered? And I'm wondering whether that's because they are hooking into part of you that actually they don't have themselves. So that's where I am so far. Hopefully that kind of summarises it. So let's see, what's going on in the chat box today? What are you all talking about? Nothing to do with audio, nothing to do with human design. So I'm going to let you all carry on with that. So just tell me what sorts of insights you have gained from it.
Insights I've gained, probably one of the most useful for me is, in my particular chart, my emotional solar plexus center is activated, and that would be the same for about 50% of the population have got that center activated. And what that means is that I am not designed to be spontaneous in the sense of spontaneously making decisions.
Does that upset you?
No, it's not necessarily about the thing, but it's the emotional center, the emotional solar plexus, works on a wave basis, and depending on there's different types of circuitry in the chart, different types of ways the centers are actually connected together, and depending on that, the person will have a different type of emotional wave. Some waves are very sort of high, what they call high highs, low lows, very sort of angular sort of wave. Some are more a bit like a roller coaster, sort of having a long sort of shallow chug up the slope sort of thing, and then a deep drop down. Mm-hmm. And some are more of an even sort of more like a sine wave type thing. But the idea of the emotional center is that it's designed to give us clarity over time if that particular center is activated. So it's not about instant clarity. And that's what I was talking about earlier on about authority, about decision-making processes. Mm-hmm. For some people, their authority in their chart is an instantaneous one. They will get a response to something, and that is correct for them then, and is unlikely to change. So for me, I mean, I've had situations in my life where I've jumped into things, made a decision about something, and then maybe the next day, a few days later or something, I've thought, why did I do that? I don't really want to do that anymore. But then you, from most senses, you're actually sort of committed to it. Then it's very difficult to get out of it. So having that awareness of not being correct for me to actually jump straight into things or be spontaneous in decisions has actually been really helpful. Because it's helped me guide you more towards making better decisions for me anyway. But it's also helped me to be less hard on myself about the decisions I've made in the past that have gone, a bit.
I'll edit that out. Tap your belly up.
Yes.
Or pear-shaped, since the show's called Food for Thought. So you can have such insights that they really do influence how you feel about yourself personally then.
Yeah, and that, for me, that's very much it. It's very much about helping to. It's the understanding of ourselves, so that the using the energy more effectively, more efficiently, as I said, is part of it, and working with less resistance. But the resistance also comes from us resisting ourselves and resisting the way we are, and a lot of the time it's because we've been. So say society, but our sort of Western thinking tends to want to make everybody the same, standardised. I think because that's the way the the collective often tends to work. It likes things to be replicable, and if you do this, then it works, and if you do that, it doesn't work, so you do this sort of thing. But understanding your human design. For me anyway, it just opens up so much more, it releases so much more energy because I'm not fighting myself all the time.
It's interesting about that whole you're not fighting yourself anymore, because that comes down to intuition to a certain extent, doesn't it? Western society, particularly science, has poo-pooed intuition and our personal experience, and then very much placed it back in it has to be provable. It has to be part of a scientific experiment. Then we'll accept that actually it happens. But this whole resistance, people often feel out of sorts, and the whole illness picture. Really points to the fact that you're calling it resistance. I'm calling it the lack of listening to intuition, and
or as they say, dis-ease.
Yeah, the absolute disease that is going on with ourselves, and because you're absolutely right. I will bring this back to medications, which are all standardised and give us a very standard approach to healthcare. And that's not that creates resistance again. And it's really interesting that you're saying about that whole resistance piece, because I do think Western society does just want to standardise us, and this is where it's creating this whole people really questioning what's going on, and with themselves they totally feel ill at ease all the time.
Well, the point of human design really with somebody's chart is not about imposing a set of rules or something. It's really as you could say, a sort of like a tool to empowerment, really, because it's identifying some principles within that person's energetic makeup that will be guidelines for it, but there's nothing in it that is sort of like set in stone. You must do this, or you do that sort of thing. They are designed to be sort of guidelines for somebody, as opposed to sort of the Ten Commandments or something like that. And it's very much about putting the onus back on the person themselves, with support to actually be able to guide their own ship. I have this, I haven't written it yet, but there's a blog post I want to do about disengaging from the mothership.
That's perfect. They're talking about the Palladians in the chat box.
So, you get these great big sci-fi movies with the great big huge sort of planet-sized spaceship sort of thing, and then you get this little sort of escape pod that's sort of on there, and it's sort of like somebody making a dash for it to get away before the whole thing blows up, and it's sort of we're all sort of getting away in our escape pod rather than be sort of guided and not guided, but instructed and sort of I can't get the words out at the moment, but this idea of it being told what to do effectively by the sort of the whole, and actually sort of escaping and getting into something where we've got our own controls, where we can guide it ourselves and we can try things out and we can guide our own sort of pod where we want to go.
And we're highly influenced, though, aren't we? Without even realising it by our society, by symbolism and imagery and the media and how people then relay what's going on in the media. It's highly influential, and it's all part of creating that standardisation of us so that we do what we are meant to be doing. And but the charts really do help you with kind of gaining that awareness about yourself and then taking a level of responsibility. Really interesting. So talk about the different types, because you've touched on them each time, but can you go into more detail about you started off talking about generators and projectors. Can you talk about those different types in more detail for me?
Yeah, sure. The first type that's going to be talked about is manifestors. Manifestors are approximately 89% of the population.
How do they know?
How do they know? Well, from it's the configuration of the chart. Okay. How do they know? They'll know when they've had the human design chart done.
No. How do
what determines a manifestor?
Yeah, how do they know that makes up that certain number of the population? Have they done research on it?
Oh, I think probably not necessarily research, but probably from the charts or whatever that have been done, and if it's correlated out across the population or so on. Okay. On the Human Design website, Jovian Archive, there are statistics on. I'm not sure whether statistics on types, but there's lot of statistics based on the charts that they have actually, because they've done, I don't know how many hundreds of thousands of free charts or whatever. But those are the anticipated percentages anyway.
Okay. So I suppose I'm looking for more detail around that, because I'd really just tell me, because I'm a generator, aren't I?
Uh-huh.
So tell me more about me being a generator. What would that mean?
I just go through the different types, and we'll come back to generators.
Okay, go on then.
So what makes a manifestor a manifestor? If that's what you're saying. Yeah. A manifestor has the throat center. Remember, saying the throat center is a center for creative expression and manifestation. Has the throat center activated, and also has a connection to one of the. There's 4 what they call motor centers in human design, and they are sort of. All the centres are energy centres, but these are sort of like more doing energy, if you like.
Okay. So
it's a manifestor is somebody who has got the throat centre activated, and also a direct connection from that to one of the 4 motor centres. So it means that they have got the centre for creative expression and manifestation. But they've also got energy to that centre as well.
Okay.
They're doing energy to it. The second type, if you like, manifesting generators. When Ra originally, well, to start off with, the actual types weren't actually part of the original download of the human design system. They came in later on, but in the early teachings, they talked about generators, just generators, and there was a sort of like a subtype of manifesting generators. What's now often looked at is manifesting generators as being sort of their own type, because there's enough differences. And manifesting generators are sort of like a combination of manifestors and generators. So they have almost like a combined strategy, combined type, and so on. And manifesting generators have the same thing. They have a connection, have the throat center activated, but also a connection to an energy center. But they also have the sacral center, which is the center for life force, workforce energy. It's the most consistent energy center in the human design chart. So they also have that as well. Generators don't have a connection to the throat, otherwise they would be a manifesting generator or manifestor. But they do have the sacral center. Projectors don't have, certainly don't have the sacral center, and they don't have a direct connection to the throat. So projectors are more here to sort of guide and manage. They're the ones that need to wait to be invited into things, really, for the big things, for sort of like career choices, relationships, type things, or whatever. And then finally, reflectors, I sort of, probably about less than 1% of the population. And reflectors don't have any of the centres actually activated in their chart, don't have any of the centres coloured in. So they are really sort of, with their centres, reflecting back the health of an environment or the people around them.
Okay. So they're the main ones.
Those are the human design types, yeah.
Okay. And we all fall into one or the other of them. Uh-huh. Or can we be more than one?
No, you'll be one particular type because of the definitions, really, that I've said. If you've got the throat center activated in your chart and you've got a direct connection to one of the motor centers, then you will be either a manifestor. If you've got the sacral center activated, then it'll make you a manifesting generator, because generators have that sacral center. And so projectors are projectors because they don't have a direct connection. They don't have either the sacral center or they don't have one of those motor centers actually connected to the throat. So it's sort of, but there's clear distinctions, if you like, between the different types in terms of the chart makeup.
Interesting. Now, Blue Sky, she asked me to post Sue's web address. I've done it right this time. She does. She has got 2 T's in it. I forgot. Sorry, guys. And Robert's saying we can observe the energies and frequencies. We are not that what we can be a part of. The observer mind is behind it all. Yeah, and is it it's Albert Pop's work that basically is shows that the observer of experiments basically highly influences it.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So we are highly influential. We put out these energies and we can influence, and we can influence more than we think around our reality.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Well, we actually, through our thoughts and what we actually do create our reality, but it's just that a lot of what we're creating is unconscious.
Yeah. Sadly,
as opposed to in our awareness.
Yeah. And this is where it becomes really important to kind of be happy in what you're doing generally, because that, the more unhappy you are, the more your unconscious mind gives that out, doesn't it?
Or focusing on what you want. you do want as opposed to what you don't want. Because worrying is unconscious creation.
Interesting.
Unconscious negative creation, shall we say.
So, AKA Cass, hello, how are you? Learn how to say no and don't be part of the mad game. I have solar plexus activated. We are the architects. We are indeed. You know? Absolutely. Good for you. What's your solar plexus telling you? How are you feeling about that? Right. So, the chart outlines and reminds us of what we kind of already know now. Doesn't it? So, but can it show you what's fixed and what is moving?
It will show you what is the centres that are actually activated in the chart are what are, you could say, sort of fixed in your own chart, in your own experience, and they are what are you. You know, they are constant. They are. To a certain extent, you know, what you can rely on. The centres that are not activated are the centres that are then open to receiving energy from other people, you know, from the transits and whatever. The conditioning part, I suppose, really comes into is to when we start identifying with that energy and thinking and believing that it's ours. One of the, as my teacher says, certainly about the emotional centre, emotional solar plexus, is if you haven't got that centre activated, if you remember to be like a screen door, or, you know, a mesh door sort of thing, that the energy just passes through rather than a sponge that just soaks it up. If you have energy that's coming into you and you're like, you could be saying, going back to the quantum side, going back and grabbing hold of it, so to speak, and trying to analyse it and trying to say, why am I feeling this particular way? Then, you know, you're stopping that energy from just flowing through. Whereas if you
go on, sorry.
Yeah, I was just saying, whereas if you know, just allow it to sort of pass through, you can sort of, you know, well, I can't speak about this one because I've got the solar plexus centre defined in my chart, but you know, it could be, emotions are, by the nature of it, they are supposed to move. It's energy in motion. So if you know, if your solar plexus centre, for example, is open, is unactivated, then, you know, it's almost like feeling an emotion and just sort of registering it, but just not in the same way that I suppose in the same way like meditation. You know, if you're meditating, they say about, you know, it's not about not thinking. You can't rid your mind of thoughts, but it's not holding on to those thoughts. It's just sort of almost like, oh, that's a thought, and just letting it pass through. Similar sort of thing with the emotions, rather than just holding on to them, rather than sort of registering that something happened, then trying to analyse it or trying to sort of do something with it. It's just, oh, you know, that's a bit of anger going through me or something, you know.
Fascinating. Now, A.K. Cass, she's shouted at me, hi Deb, hi Cass. So, and let's see, she's saying, or he knows. Sorry. Shouldn't make that assumption, guys. My heart chakra blew right open a few years ago, allowed me to write a book to resolve unresolved issues from my past. Didn't sleep for 7 days and full of energy just to get the book finished. Fantastic. How interesting. Mm-hmm. Yeah. And this is the thing. It's actually really powerful stuff when you start to connect with your own energies, isn't it?
Absolutely, yeah.
So,
that itself may have even been sort of like an inspirational download anyway.
Yeah, well, that's interesting, isn't it? Because, you know, the whole channeling thing, when you start to suddenly go in the flow and get into the zone, and you just feel like you've got this energy and this total focus, it can be fascinating.
Well, the whole story with Ra, the guy that you know, sort of downloaded human design. He was living in a little stone cottage in let me think, Menorca. Ibiza. I can't remember which one it was now, but somewhere in one of the Spanish islands. And he was coming home, just back to his cottage one night, and there was a light inside that there shouldn't have been. And as soon as he crossed over the threshold into his cottage, he just got this voice that said, "Okay, we're going to give you information." And he just literally wrote for 7 days. He didn't sleep, didn't sort of do anything. It's just this information was just sort of like downloaded to him over a period of about 7 days. And his dog came into the cottage as well, just as soon as it came down, laid down and didn't move for 7 days either.
I'll be honest, I've got a dog like that, but she's a little she never gets up. I think probably some of my audience have got teenagers like that. So let's see, Uncle Freshy. Over the years, I've seen the energy taken away from us by ourselves, and we always want to blame others. Yeah, it's about bringing it back to ourselves. We have to take responsibility. The responsibility always lies with us individually. Looking outside of that is foolhardy, really, as far as I'm concerned. AKA Cass, let it flow, absolutely. Robert Stanley, be the observer of your thoughts. Yeah. Yeah, it's really interesting that, the more that I've meditated and spent time meditating, the more that has become really quite a big focus for me, observing my thoughts. And AK Cass thought it was a health issue. That's quite funny, but it felt great. I bet it did. Okay, let's see what else. Right, so I think we fancy a break. And Sue, do you fancy staying on for the next hour?
Yeah, no mind.
Brilliant. So I'm going to put some music on for everybody, and we'll have a quick cup of tea, and we'll be back with you in about 5 minutes. So I'm with Sue Millet today, who's not an expert by any stretch of imagination, okay? She doesn't want to be known as that. But what she does is she uses the tools that we're talking about in her own daily practice and to kind of direct her life. And I thought it was really interesting to get her on to talk with us today. So let's just see what else is going on in the chat box. You do know I love the chat box, and I do like the fact that you were talking in it. So let's see, guys. Keeping centered is an issue because I try to help others. And it's interesting you say that, Cass, because I think that's absolutely key for people who do tend to help others, because they get drained so easily. Now, bringing that back to human design, Sue, would that be because that centre, that we're talking about the lock and key element of human design with people? Is that because people who want to help, other people tend to be drawn to their energy in that centre, perhaps? So it can drain them.
Well, it could be, but there can be motivations for actually the wanting to help. 3 things if I can keep in my head while I talk about them. One is there's actually some of the connections between the different centres. There are some connections that are very much about sort of family and wanting to look after people. So that's one particular possibility. Another one is with the emotional solar plexus. If that centre's unactivated, then the person, because they will pick up emotional energy from other people and it'll be amplified, be sort of intensified, then it's very possible for people with the open solar plexus to sort of develop strategies of wanting to, not necessarily wanting to please people, but wanting to keep people happy, because to try and mitigate that sort of intensifying of energy. If you're keeping somebody happy and they're not getting angry or not getting sort of upset with you, then you don't get that big blast of emotional energy. Another one with the throat center. If somebody's throat center is either unactivated or it's not sort of connected up to anything sort of one of the motors, anything powerful in the chart, then that center somebody can often find that they're they can almost feel invisible in the sense, they can speak and not literally not be heard by other people unless they're actually, sort of recognised or appreciated for what they're actually doing. So there can be with the undefined or the unactivated throat centre, there can also be a sort of, people can develop different strategies for getting recognition. And a lot of this can be unconscious. It's not necessarily things that we are, we consciously sort of say, oh, I'm going to do that because it's going to get me sort of people to notice me. But it's things that we, in the whole way that we build sort of unconscious strategies to get what we need. So there could be, factors like that involved in it as well.
Interesting. And now Cass is also saying you need to learn to protect my own energy because I care too much. And, therapists, we're often drained because we don't protect our own energy. And I actually had an experience with a client a few months ago where I did some work with them and then spent a week almost keeled over after it because I'd not protected myself enough. So, protecting yourself is really important. Robert, it's okay to show some tough love to those that invade your space. I agree. Your space is really important. I've experienced that personally where I have quite a calm, serene space and somebody came into it for a period of my life and basically it's almost like the Peanuts character with the all the flies and stuff flying above them. It all became completely chaotic and I became hugely stressed out by the whole situation and I've had to learn to become really protective of my space now. And that was it was a big learning for me. And so helping others only denies their lessons unless they ask for help first and take care of yourself. Yeah, it's it can be it can take away from them actually having that experience, can't it? So.
I mean, it goes back to the classic thing about when you're on a flight or something like that. So you've got to apply your own mask before you try and sort out people, because if you one of the things I've often said to sort of to clients and stuff is that if somebody is really wanting to do things for other people, that if they're not doing things for themselves, then they're actually being by not doing things for themselves, they're actually sort of denying people the energy that they could be giving because they're not actually looking out for themselves. So they if they want to be helping other people, they've got to really sort of look after themselves or put themselves first, in the sense of at least making sure that they are being looked after, because otherwise the quality of what they're actually giving is decreased.
This is where the coaching model is really interesting, isn't it? Because, of course, you can help someone just by helping them realise what they need to do. That whole aha moment can, it passes the responsibility back to them, doesn't it? Rather than telling them, basically allow them to experience the learning for themselves.
Right, that's sort of classic. Teach a man to fish as opposed to give a man a fish. Because if you just tell somebody something and that's really why, in terms of human design, why I'm really fascinated by it, and I've really found it useful and stuff for me. But it's the practical elements of it. It's how you use it. It's what you do with it. So I'm not really sort of into, like doing readings and stuff for people, because because as we said, there's so much information to actually take in, and it's like, when I first came across human design, it's like, okay, that's my type, and I'm emotionally defined and stuff, but so what do I do with it? So that's where I want to sort of be, working with helping people, is to actually sort of help them implement that and work with it.
Interesting. So how does it help you to live in your true nature now?
Well, another factor in my particular chart, one thing I haven't mentioned about is each particular chart has its own what they call profile, which is could say a sort of way of approaching in life. My particular profile is what they call a 1-3. It's investigating and it's investigating and it's experiencing or experimenting. So with my in my particular energy system, for me, it's very much about sort of understanding, getting to the real foundation of things, but then playing with it and trying it out. And I often say for people that have the experimentation side, you can say you've never actually made a mistake, because what it's been about is finding things that the classic sort of guy with a light bulb sort of thing. I can't think his name at the moment, but there's no wrong answers. It's about sort of finding it, experimenting, finding out things that don't work and such. So for me, it's I say, well, the helpful part for me, as I said, has really been about the being able to understand myself more and not beat myself up so much for what I perceive to be wrong or needing to be fixed. I think that's a great. I've spent a lot of my life doing courses, studying things and whatever, because I felt that there was something wrong with me. And what human design has really helped me to do is actually recognise that a lot of what I thought was actually wrong was just the way I am, and that's the way I'm meant to be. Not just the way I am, and that's a cop out, but that's just the way that I am, and other people are designed to be the way they are.
And that comes back to us being very indoctrinated in regards to our schooling system, in regards to how we should be in all the media. And often we're made to feel that actually the way we are isn't right, particularly if we're in an alternative field and we're not working at the 9-to-5 normal job, and we don't wear the same types of clothes and things, and our thinking is different.
Well, it's actually in human. I think I mentioned a little while ago about the connections between the different centres in human design. Well, those connections are split into 3 different types of what's called circuitry. The things. And there's individual circuitry, there's tribal circuitry, and there's collective circuitry. And part of the collective circuitry is what we call logical. And the logical, you think of Spock in Star Trek, logical. It doesn't. None of the logical circuitry doesn't touch the solar plexus, doesn't touch the emotional centre. So there's no emotions in the logical sense, and that's what a lot of what the logical side wants to do is it wants to. It's doubtful. It wants to prove things. It wants to. It only takes something as being true if it's replicable, if it's, if there's patterns to it, that you can say that you do this and this happens. So that's where we're so conditioned by that type of energy, because that's what, like our school systems and stuff are actually built around, on that sort of, empirical type stuff or scientific type stuff, that you do something, you get a result, and then you keep doing the same thing to keep getting the same result. Whereas the individual circuitry, people with a lot of individual circuitry are here to be mutative. They're here to be different, and to a certain extent to sort of inspire changes, to be the people that spark changes in the collective, into the tribal, into the collective. But it can be a very lonely place at times, because if people are very much other people are very much in the collective, then, I think, what are you doing,
Need to join TNS. It's not so lonely once you join us. So honestly, there's lots of people feeling the same here. So Robert was saying, we need to see it as it is and not as we want it to be, as it is how we experience. That's an interesting point, because obviously what do you think about what Robert's just said there, Sue?
Right, again, what was it?
So we need to see it as it is and not how we want it to be, as it is how we experience. Maybe you want to say some more about that, Robert, to us, and then we can maybe have a conversation about it a little bit more. Because that's an interesting comment, because in some respects, I would say that that would be part of going with the flow for me, to be able to see it as it is and just be able to kind of flow through that and not be giving a level of resistance against it. But also at the same time, I'd want to actually try and alter what I want to experience, and effectively see whether it's me having an influence on that, or whether I'm able to actually influence that whole experience going forward, so that I don't have to, particularly if it's negative, don't have to experience it again in some way. So, anyway, you've got Lennon and McCartney's charts up now, haven't you?
Yes.
So go into Lennon and McCartney's charts and what you see in there, because that'd be interesting for me, particularly Lennon's.
I had a quick look when we stopped for the break. They're both emotional, so they've both got the solar plexus side. So you probably feel the emotion in what they've written. The interesting thing is the combination between them. Paul McCartney has. I mean, and this is also, these. I've not got absolute confirmation that these are the right times. I don't know where they get their information from on the program, but I'm assuming that the information is right. Paul McCartney would be a projector, so he's got no sort of consistent life force, workforce energy, but he's got a lot of connection around his throat. And that manifests. He's got a defined identity center, so he's got a sense of who he is and where he's going. Whereas in John Lennon's chart, John Lennon's got the sacral center, the consistent source of workforce, life force energy. But that's the only thing. That and the solar plexus center, the emotional center, is the only sense he's actually got connected. So he's got no connections to his throat or anything. But you put the two charts together. Well, I can't put them together, but I'm looking at the side by side. Together, they would meet up, and they would have definitions of throat. And I'm just trying to check. Yeah, they would get. I don't know if they get the expression. It's difficult without actually being able to sort of superimpose charts one on top of each other, because I'm looking at all different connections and stuff on there to see what would actually match up. Or what wouldn't. They would obviously have a lot more centres connected. Paul McCartney has a lot more connections around his throat. What does come out in there, though, is that they have that together they make up what in human design is the channel of talent, which is quite interesting.
Oh, interesting.
But they're actually written. One's got John Lennon's got one part which is on his own would probably have made him quite sort of. Not say insecure in his talent. He'd always sort of tend to want to do more, or he would never probably feel satisfied with what he'd actually produced. Whereas the connection that Paul McCartney's got, the other end of it, is more of a sort of expansive, sort of prolific, exuberant sort of side. But sort of bring them together, and you get the best of both. That's why it sort of creates the channel of talent, because it's the doubt on the one end is sort of mitigated by the expansiveness and the creativity and stuff on the other end.
Interesting. So Robert said, as things happen, let them be what they are, and not how we would rather things are for our comfort of our ego. Ah, right, okay. Yeah. Put our ego to one side. Okay, and Cass, everyone will see something different depending on their perceptions and life lessons. Not all will see the same as you. And, we know that from research, don't we? Because when you interview people at accidents, they basically all have a different perception of what happened. It's really fascinating. So thanks, guys. Your inputs are really, really helpful, actually. And Cass is saying questions for the guest and host in caps, please, so we don't distract the host, maybe just for questions. I tell you, I'm just continuously distracted sometimes by the chat box, as you all know, particularly last week with Duck Dodgers and Stingray and what they were saying to each other. Has that domestic finished now? Let's hope it has. Anyway, so does the chart show how you might get stuck by any chance? You know, you're thinking. So
quite possibly. Again, it would depend. There's different areas of the chart that will. There's meaning in all the different centres and all the different parts of the circuitry, parts of the pipework, if you like, that connect up the stuff. If somebody is, has stuff activated, defined in their chart, then they're going to have that consistently. But if it's open or sort of unactivated, then they're going to pick it up from inconsistently on a whole variety of different ways from people around them. Going back to what I was saying about the circuitry, if somebody has got a lot of logical circuitry in their chart, but also has on the individual side, there's something called knowing. It's more, you could say like intuition. People know things from a variety of different methods. If they've got a combination of that, then it's like it could be that they know something, but they don't know how they know it. But there's also in their thinking is doubt and suspicion and wanting to prove what they've done. That can sort of turn into quite a sort of conundrum. And I think probably in a lot of charts, there will be a sort of conundrum in the sense of almost like opposing things or tendency to want to be one way, and wanting to be another way as well. One of the profiles comes to mind, 2-4, which is the hermit opportunist. One part of it, one side, the desire, if you like, is to shut ourselves away and keep everybody out and not, safe in their little shell or little home or whatever. And then the other part of it is very much about sort of going out and wanting to be with people, wanting to create friendships, wanting to create networks and stuff with people, because that's where the opportunities come from. So, that in itself is quite a conundrum or conflict for somebody, because they've got these two sides of their personality that don't necessarily, and it's about finding a way of not managing, but having those two sides sort of coexist together.
Interesting. So, I'd like to actually, for the last half hour, talk about matrix energetics, because you also practice that for yourself, don't you?
Some of the time, yeah.
And it's really, really interesting. I've wanted to go off and get trained in it, but Richard Bartlett only trains it, or did only train it in Germany and the States. And I don't want to go and do it in Germany personally, and I've just never had enough cash to go to the States to do it. So I always pick your brains around it, because I'm always endlessly fascinated. Tell me about how Richard has developed and discovered matrix energetics, and a little bit about what it is.
Okay.
Exactly.
Richard calls matrix energetics a consciousness technology, because it's because if you go back, what we were saying earlier on about the observer effect, and when you start trying to sort of name something and contain it, then you also contain its power, its effectiveness and stuff. By defining something, you're actually defining what it's capable of, really. So he says that every time he describes it slightly differently. So that's probably not answering anybody's questions in terms of what it is.
No,
but it's
energy work.
It's energy work, and it's well, I suppose the only way I can describe it is probably describe it in how it makes sense, or how it sort of works for me, or it does. Over my time, I've gone through a whole range of different sort of energy techniques, and we mentioned EFT before, and EFT over the years since Gary Craig developed it. When he first developed it, it was quite a long process. EFT now has, as we said, various people have sort of taken it off and done things with it and developed it. EFT itself has become a lot faster, or the variations of EFT have become a lot faster. And for me, matrix energetics is like going into a space of possibility where it's sort of like, what comes to mind is sort of like suspend all belief, all ye who enter here. Because it's like, it's like putting your beliefs, leaving your beliefs at the door and going into a space where sort of, into the matrix, if you like, into the field where anything is actually possible. And the only thing that makes it not possible is the fact that our beliefs and stuff around what is possible. That makes any sense. You're going to regret asking me about this.
Well, that's the point, isn't it, behind it? Because he's created something which was tapped into something and created a process in some respects, but it's nowhere near as mechanical as EFT or Psych K, and yet it's along the same sort of lines as those therapies or those techniques, let me say, and almost theta healing in many respects, which is the three that I use, and which is all about altering energy around an individual or through an individual, for me, in a focused intent.
Yeah, I mean, what even as far as if you. I don't know if he's got any videos. I've got an audio set of Richard Bartlett, which is brilliant. It's a recording of a seminar that he did, sort of 6 hours of recording, and it's just amazing to listen to. It doesn't necessarily teach you how to do his basic, what he calls the 2-point, but it's great for sort of stretching your mind and looking at different possibilities. But in that, he says about, somebody comes to him and says, can you help me with this? He says, I don't know. Because it's not about having a tool for doing something else. It's about sort of responding to whatever happens in the moment. It's about being creative. I mean, how he sort of found matrix energetic. He's a big sort of comic book fan. Batman, Superman, etc. And he was he's trained chiropractic, I think. Is it chiropractic? And he'd done he did 2 naturopathic degrees, I think it was. And but anyway, because of his training, he couldn't, or his qualification wasn't valid in one particular state. He had to practice where he'd originally qualified. So he was travelling tremendously long distances a weekend so he could practice while he was studying, back home where he lived. And consequently, when he was practicing, he was very tired. And he had this girl come in with an eyesight problem. And he said he was sort of sitting there as the parents were talking about it, and he was hallucinating as he said that. And he, out of the side of his eye, he saw this image of Superman standing there, sort of, and Superman, the image of Superman beamed X-ray vision into this girl's eyes, and Richard was reminded of a Superman episode where a particular event had taken place, where the specifics and stuff of it. But this, when he came out of it, he just did a slight sort of this, and in fact, I'm not even sure that he did or whether the Superman image did it, but it was all his sort of creation, if you like. And that was really how Matrix Energetics sort of first sort of started. It was this whole thing about dismissing our well, I don't know, just going to a place of possibility. It's just something that is so intangible to talk about, but it's just.
Yeah, I was hoping you might explain it. But so it's about creating a new state of mind, opening up to possibilities, and giving you a new way of looking at things. In effect, and it sounds to me like it's a system of transformation that's based on kind of subtle energy physics, consciousness, and like focused intent. Then,
but it's using the quantum basis of something changing because of being observed. Richard's sort of basic technique, if you go on his courses, or you can actually, I think from his website, you can actually get a link to a YouTube video that demonstrates what he calls the 2 point, which is, effectively you have he's working physically in this particular example. He's got a sort of chiropractic background. He tends to work quite physically with people, but you pick one point on the person's body or off the body if you want, where it sort of where he's drawn to, basically. And then a second point that's actually drawn to. And then there's a process of sort of holding those 2 points in your awareness, but not necessarily thinking about them, and then just sort of dropping into the heart center, into that sort of connection with the field. And allowing whatever change wants to happen.
But that's just, it's working with the body's own ability, isn't it, fundamentally?
The body's own ability
to actually create change for itself.
The body's own ability, but it's also, I think, using the information or the whatever you want to call it in the field, in the matrix, because you can work with matrix energetics on a physical condition. I've worked on physical conditions for other people, but you can also work on personal development issues. You can work on things that you want to change in life and so on, which aren't then necessarily specifically to do with the body's physical intelligence.
I think it is totally fascinating. All the energy work, I have to say, 15 years ago, you couldn't have convinced me about it. And then little bit by little bit, I was introduced to it. And now I'm a complete advocate, totally. Yeah. And I love Donna Eden's work in particular. I do her energy routine every morning, and that's well worth, actually, guys. I'll put her name in, actually. It's called the 5-minute energy routine. It's actually on, if you go into YouTube, guys, you'll find Donna Eden and that routine, and it can be really quite powerful. And this is just playing with your energies effectively, and opening up to the fact that you can almost mold them to do what you want in many respects. So
I have this sort of sense sometimes of playing with reality almost, and that I sometimes sort of experience that 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 my reality, in the sense of my beliefs about how life is and what's possible, etc., is almost like a it's a horrible analogy, but you know how you get sort of like baked on food on a sort of oven tray.
Yeah.
that is so stuck on it feels like it's part of the tray itself. But you sort of stick, like you were saying earlier on, stick it in water and do we say or something else? And those sort of dried on bits actually, start to lift off. And I get this sense sometimes of just sort of like observing things and observing something as if it was something that I thought was part of me, or I thought was actually true, and just sort of just allowing it to sort of lift a bit and sense a bit of space between that and how I perceive myself, if you see what I mean.
So talk to me about, the intent. So what do you specifically do and use it for instance?
Well, the Matrix, well, again, the whole intent thing is a bit of a mystery, because you don't, when you do matrix energetics, you're not really if you're going to, you can have sort of like a general intent of like wanting to make a change for something, but if you're too fixed on what you're trying to change, then you're actually limiting the changes that can actually happen. So it's a very fine line between actually, I mean, what Richard will do, and he has in his seminars, he has to demonstrate what he's doing. You have people up on the stage, and he gets people to sort of say to start, he said, if I could help you with something, what would it be? The person starts talking about, blah, blah, it's pain in my back or whatever, and, such and such, and this isn't right in my life, this isn't right in my life. And what he does, he just says, I've just put it up on the clipboard, and he just sort of puts it up on an imaginary clipboard, just up above, or up in the air. But he doesn't refer to any of that during the sessions of demonstration. All he's doing is just going to where his attention is drawn to, what comes up to him, what comes into his awareness, or anything. So it's not, there is an element of, to start off with, maybe saying what you're wanting to work with or whatever. But when you're actually, quote, doing it, you're not trying to do something. All you're doing is you're just being open to whatever. It's almost like a sense being sort of guided by, you could say, by intuition or by whatever.
Or drawn by the energy.
Yeah, possibly.
You said in a small voice.
I don't know what it's been. It's a possibility, but to sort of say that it is might then be limiting it.
Yeah, it's that whole possibility around it, isn't it? That it could be absolutely anything. That's fascinating. Now, Steve, apparently you're going to be running off to the shop for a packet of fags. Please, this is food for thought, and I'm a naturopath. Do you really think I'm going to approve of that? Right. So sit yourself back down and get yourself a glass of water. And thanks, Cass, for putting the link up. I appreciate that. And Cass, I hope you're not going to the shop for the same things. Otherwise, I should be disapproving of you too. So Sue, when do you tend to use it, matrix energetics?
I use it. I actually go to a matrix practice group once a month, where we play in the matrix, and get different possibilities. Because it is so vague, I don't know that I necessarily use it a vast amount for myself when I'm on my own. I've used it for other people with my investigative and experimental nature. When I first trained him, I wanted to try it out on people. So anybody that mentioned any physical problems, I tried it out, because physical problems are ones that you can actually measure something fairly sort of instantaneously if there's been a change. And that was having some really interesting results with people. Peculiar things, people, they say with EFT that there's a apex effect that, people, once people have gone through change, it's almost like their brain can't sort of comprehend it, and they start justifying to themselves that they didn't have the problem in the first place. And you get that similar sort of thing with sometimes with people with matrix energetics on a physical sense, because it's, if somebody's had a pain or I've seen Richard work with people on stage where they've had sort of scoliosis or something, or a real sort of disfigurement in the spine, and he'll do something, just a quick sort of matrix technique, and their spine will be much, much straighter. And it's very difficult for people to actually sort of comprehend that change in the sense of that a before and after. So, it's sort of like, well, it couldn't have been that bad before. It's so much better now.
It's interesting what you're saying about the spinal straightening. I was on a training course to train for my Sire a few years ago, and there was Matthew Brownell from Manchester, who is a therapist who works in St Anne's Square, if you want to look him up. And I watched him work on somebody, didn't touch them at all, just had his hands above the body of this individual, and they did a before reading on a gas machine which looked at the aura, and it's a Russian machine, I can't remember what the name of it is, GSP machine. Anyway, someone might know in the chat box. And then basically, so there was parts of the aura missing, and he basically worked on this individual for about 15 minutes. Then we all went downstairs, and this person was read again on this machine, and it had changed the aura completely, and he hadn't touched it. So that absolutely fascinated me. But also one of the individual's leg was slightly shorter, and they showed that actually it was nowhere near as short. So that was it was really, really fascinating. Now, Michael, you've asked me, please give a comparison between matrix energetics and man-made frequency generators like Rife machines. That's a really interesting point, actually, and I think I'm not sure I could. With that, I'd have to really think about that, Michael, and come back to you. Skype me that question separately so I can think about it. Michael, I know you've got my Skype, so that's not a problem. Let me have consider that. What about you, Sue? Have you got a perspective on that?
I don't know. I don't think it's got. What's the second one you said about the?
It's about the Rife machine. And Michael knows that I've got a Rife machine. So I have a BCX Ultra. So effectively I use Rife frequencies, and I also have an Asira machine which uses bioresonance effectively to pushes a frequency through the body and then basically looks for energetic blocks. And we'll see the energetic differences. So I'm not exactly sure how, in all honesty, the difference would be with matrix energetics without really thinking about it, because I still don't truly understand matrix energetics, which is why I had Sue on today, because she uses it and she works with it more frequently. Cass says I might not be familiar with Rife. I'm definitely familiar with Rife, but I'm learning about it at the moment more than anything. I got a piece of equipment about 2 months ago, so I'm in that whole learning curve, and I'm not doing the Frankenstein thing and experimenting on my clients yet. And let me see.
The only thing I would say about it, I think, is that by actually going down that route and trying to work out what are the differences between two things like that, is you're possibly going into the danger of then, again, being limited by your definitions.
It's a really interesting point, isn't it? Because the whole point of matrix energetics is that it opens up those possibilities, and it is the whole question of what could be if I just did this, and you're only limited by your imagination with it, aren't you?
Yeah. And the brilliant thing, I think it was on Rich's audio set. He tells about a story of one of his somebody that was on the seminar, and she was a housewife, and she done a seminar, and a friend of hers broke her arm, and the person that had been on the seminar sort of sat down just before she went to bed that night. The woman sort of broke her arm was obviously wasn't too bad a break. But what am I trying to say? Trying to speed up and tell the story here. Anyways, this person who'd been on the seminar sat down and thought, okay, what do I know about broken bones? She was just pondering it, and she thought, in Harry Potter, when Harry fell off his broom and broke his arm, they put this skelly growth stuff on it, and that mended his arm. So she thought, all right, well, let's just imagination. Let's just put some. This was all sort of remotely. It wasn't with the person. I just put some skelly grow on my friend's arm, and then she went to sleep. And she spoke to her friend the next day, and her friend said, "How are you?" and stuff. She said, I have absolutely the most terrible. Like my arm was so painful. It was really, really killing me. I couldn't get a wink of sleep. So, but she went to the hospital to have it looked at or whatever. And there was no break. And the arm was, the doctors were all saying, there must have been something wrong with the x-rays and stuff. But Richard's comment on it was, the fact that she, because she was a housewife, because she hadn't got any training, she was able to be more creative. If it had been him, he would have probably gone down more of a traditional sort of route because of all the training that he has had, in the medical field. But also he said that as far as the skelly grow was concerned, he said the reason it hurt was because in Harry Potter, when he had the skelly grow put on him, the skelly grow actually is an excruciating remedy. If she actually thought it was something that was less painful, then a friend would have had a much easier ride of it. But, that was that thing about sort of, sometimes the more you know, it can be a limitation for you.
Interesting. So Simply Steve was saying he was given a homeopathic remedy for an Achilles tendon problem last week by a hedge witch, and it was awesome. Have a greater respect for the natural remedy route now, having tried it. Excellent. Yes. One by one, we will change the world. Right, what else is going on in the chat box before we finish? And it says pain and stiffness was gone in 6 hours, completely cured within 24. I've got a really interesting thing that happened to me a while back now, about 5 or 6 months ago. And I have Lyme's disease, and sometimes if I get very stressed, it flares up, and it had gone all the way up both of my legs, up my back, onto my right arm, and then it was coming onto my left arm, and up to that point I'd been able to hide it from my clients, and as it kind of took over really, really fast, and then as it got onto my hand, I said to my hand, and I spoke to the Limes, and I said, you're not staying there, you're going, because I can't have everybody seeing this, and within 24 hours it had gone off my left arm, and at that point I realised that I could get it off the rest of my body if I wanted. So we are very, very powerful. We're far more powerful than we imagine, and up to that point I've been using all sorts of remedies and things on it to my usual protocol, which works pretty well in all honesty, to shift it, but I was so stressed it was really taking over. So let's see. And you might want to give Liam, is it Michael? No. Who was it? Simply Steve. Liam, some information about the homeopathic and the hedge witch that gave you. Okay, so I think that's it, isn't it? In the chat box. It's been nice to talk to you all today. So Sue, just tell me, to give everybody some information about how they get in contact with you if they want to talk to you more about human design. Sue's in the process of going through a transformation with what she's doing at the moment, so please don't bombard her too much with messages, but she does have a fabulous email that goes out, which is all about energy work, which is quite nice to get and read. So, Sue, how do we contact you?
I think you put my website address in.
Yep.
I
think is that the best way?
Yeah, probably for no. You can, from the website, you can either contact me, there's a contact page that will come through to me, or you can subscribe to my, there's a 5-part energy course on there. You can think of it a bit like an energy audit. It's called Your Authentic Energy. And, just gets sent out to you by autoresponder over a period of, I think one part goes out every 3 days, I think it is. And it just gets you to look at various different aspects of your energy that you might not have actually focused on before. You may have, or you may not have. So yeah, any questions? If anyone's got any questions, you can contact me through the website or sign up for the energy course, and then you'll get my newsletter as well.
Brilliant.
Yeah.
Okay.
So yes, Sue Millet with 2 T's.
Yes, I'm so sorry, guys. I forgot the other T off it. So my big apologies for that. Right then. Well, this has been Debbie Walker, and this has been Sue Millet, and we've talked about human design today and matrix energetics, kind of, I'll be honest, and with our understanding, but I do, go and find out more about it, go and read about these things, because they enable you to take control, they enable you to actually really heal yourself, transform yourselves, and create awareness, and that for me is what it's all about. So thank you very much, guys. It's been